Hi, and thanks to another paint tutorial from Promethean Paints. Today we're going to be painting a Redemptor Dreadnought in the Ultramarines Blue. We're also going to be painting the plasma gun, and I'll show you how to create a really good flame effect using a 3D print from Deadly Print Studios. First of all, we're going to start with the airbrush, putting some white ink from Vallejo into the airbrush, and then we'll be applying the white ink in the usual manner, creating the natural gradients through the airbrush, some little sprays through. Brightest areas is where you want it to be the most brightest blue, leaving a natural gradient down to the black for the deepest shadows. Pretty straightforward this, just work yourself away through the model. Don't press the button too hard on your airbrush, otherwise the ink will pull quite quickly. These are short sharp sprays, as you can see from my finger there. As soon as that paint starts to glisten, that's when it's wettest, so just move it away and just focus on the areas where you want to be the brightest. Just make sure you leave plenty for shadow so you get a nice tone of colour between the white and the black. Okay, with that done, we're now going to move to the next part, which is adding some colour. For this we're going to be using GW Contrast Frostheart, which is a really nice blue, nice and bright. So what we do is add this directly into the airbrush, no need to thin it down, it's thin enough. And much like we applied the ink, just gently apply this Frostheart blue over the entirety of the armour and any areas you've painted white. This method works for any vehicle, any model that you want to do as Ultramarines. It's an easy method to follow. You can paint an army very quickly using this. And again, just be careful here, not too much in one go. Just get a light covering of that blue first, and then move to the next section, and on and on. As soon as it starts to glisten, as you can see like that, move away. Otherwise you'll apply too much, it will spider web out, it will pull, and it will run. So just be very quick with the airbrush. And then the final stage after we do this is, once it's dried, which takes minutes, is then apply some Vallejo, AK Ultra Matte Varnish over the whole model, just to protect the armour and the work we've just done. Right, this next stage, we're now just going to be repainting some of the model. So with sort of matte black colour, Baden black, I'm using the Army Painters matte black. What we're just going to do in here is, using a slightly older brush, but one with still a good point on it, is just all of the metal work, anything you didn't paint blue, just go back and cover in the black. If you've got time, you could cover all these areas with some putty, so you wouldn't have to do this stage again, but I think it's just as quick doing this, 10 or so minutes and you'd have painted all these areas back into black. So just take your time, familiarise yourself with the model, and paint these areas back using a black colour. With that done, we're now going to move on to the metal work. So we're going to do some dry brushing here. So I'm using some AK gunmetal. You could use GW's lead boucher, or iron breaker, or even the bluish metal they've got for the grey knights. And we're just going to use a small size dry brush. I think it's a size 4 from Artify. And we're just going to apply this using our usual dry brushing method, so up and down, left or right. Try not to do all of the motions at the same time. Just cover all of that metal work now. Doesn't have to be too deep. I always like a slight grim dark to my metal work. Actually take his arm off here, makes it easier to get to a lot of these points. So just to apply this dry brush across all of those armour points, the frame, taking care across any of that blue that you don't grab any of it. If you do, don't worry, we're going to be doing edge highlighting later, so we'll be covering that up, but just take care and just work your way around the model. For the first highlight, we're going to be using, I think it's AK Natural Steel. It's not as bright as Stormhold Silver, but close to it. So you could use GW Stormhold Silver, it's fine. And just apply a small amount of this over the areas you really want to catch the light. So I do it on his claws, the very edges of some of that frame. Not too much, just subtle highlights here, using the Natural Steel or Stormhold Silver. For the golds, not much on this. The Aquila on the main body, the Mechanicum skull on the back. You could do a little bit more if you wanted to. I tend to do not too much gold on these models. I'm just going to be using AK Rusty Gold and AK Old Gold, which is sort of any GW dark golds and light golds will do here. You could just use a light gold and then shade it with some Reikland Flesh Shade or Agrax Earth Shade, even Nuln Oil, and then highlight as normal. But yeah, just follow along here, making sure not to touch any of that blue we've just painted. I'm using a size 0 brush here, but a 00, any of the artificial ranges is fine if you want to take your time, but these models are pretty big, so a size 0 is pretty decent. You'll notice also that I won't paint any of the pipework around the sarcophagus. That's because we're going to be adding some lighting effects with the airbrush, so there wasn't really any point in painting them. That's why I don't. But if you weren't going to do that, you would just paint your pipes reds and blues and highlight as normal. Okay, now we're going to be just highlighting some of those black areas, which is the gun, the missile rack, the pipes, and for that I'm just going to be using AK Anthracite Blue and AK Grey Blue. Any mid-tone greys will work for this from GW. Don't have to be too precise here, and we're just going to be edge highlighting, adding a couple of little scratches just for a little bit of character onto this model. A little bit of battle damage we can see there. Nothing clever here, just standard edge highlighting, using that grey blue on the very finest edges where you want the light to capture it the most, so just on the top edges. You'll notice as well I applied quite a lot of transfers. Most of them are from the GW ones. There's a couple from the Mighty Brush transfer range, which is fantastic, which are the scripts, a sort of skull and crossbones and the danger signs symbols you can see. To apply the transfers, I obviously wet them down with just normal water, and then I use a great tool to have for transfers, which is the microscale microsol. It allows the transfer to set and softens them and mats them down as well. So if you apply them with that, I'll probably create a tutorial for that at another time to show you how to use it. And then once they're dry, apply some of that AK Ultramatte varnish over the top and you get a painted effect. They look like you've literally painted those transfers on, as you can see here. It stops that glistening. You can actually paint then over the top of them as well to make them look hand painted. So great couple of tools in the arsenal to have for the transfers. As you can see here, I'm always dry brushing the paint on across those bigger pipes at the back. And just after we've added the red on for those little missile pods, we're on to the fun part, which will be edge highlighting and battle damage. For that we're using AK Ducat Blue, which I think is almost like an Ahriman blue. It's a very light blue, not too much white in this blue. There's still a lot of colour to it, a lot of blueness. And what we're going to do here is just the method we use a lot, and that is edge highlighting the model, but adding thicker edge highlights so that we're creating a base to add our battle damage onto. So we're pretty much going to edge highlight the entire model, but you'll notice that I'm pretty rough with it. I add lines and scratches, large sections where it looks like big blobs of blue, but that's what we're going to be adding the black to a bit later to give us our battle damage. The video speaks for itself really what I'm doing, so just follow along. The principle is that the edge highlight with the thick edge highlight will allow us to fill in the gaps with the black, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing clever here. You can add as little or as much of this as you want. You can just edge highlight as normal if you want to, but I find this adds just a bit of flavour to your models, really. Stop them just looking kind of generic. It also helps me because I've a slightly shaky right hand, so I find very clean edge highlighting very hard. So this just covers up a few little frailties that I have. It takes a little bit of practice, some confidence. At first it looks very odd, and the Ducat Blue is quite close to our finish blue, but don't worry about that, it will still stand out when you add the black to it. So just follow this along, add in the damage as much or as little as you want. see here I'm just trying a slightly lighter blue. It's a sky blue colour, just to see what that looked like. I wasn't too much liking the effect it gave. It was too white. It detracted from the blueness, so I stopped. But I wanted to just keep it in there just to show, experiment. Sometimes just do a little experiment. If it doesn't work, just stop. It didn't ruin the model. As you saw on one of the legs, we've got a massive piece of damage that I did. And so I just underpaint that with whole red, and then put some black on the wet palette as well. So the whole red will add a little bit of texture to that large section, almost like rust to it. So as you can see here, I'm just filling that in with the whole red colour, which is almost like a Rhinox hide from GW, or a Moinfane brown, a reddish brown colour. But once that's done, you'll then see what I do is I just go around, and all those bullet holes and scratches and scrapes and dents and marks, we fill in those with the black, leaving a little bit of the blue if you can. Don't worry on some of those edges to not leave any blue. You might find it at first to do this section by section, so that, you know, do a leg and then go and do the black parts, do an arm, do the black parts, just so you keep track of where you've done all your dents and scratches. But much like the edge highlighting, this is just take your time, go around the whole model, adding in those scratches with the black and on those larger areas, always leaving a bit of the blue showing around the edges as the highlight colour. And there we go. Takes about half an hour for that model, not long at all really, and we've got ourselves a pretty much completed Redemptor Dreadnought, easily ready for the tabletop. But we're just gonna, like we always do, add some more colour effects to this model. The first one is going to be our usual red glowing effects. So we've got three on the wet palette there. We've got AK Wine Red, AK Blood Red, and a matte white colour. Blood Red is Evil Sun Scarlet in GW. Not too sure about the Wine Red. Screamer Pink is a bit too pink. A Mephiston Red or Corn Red maybe is good for colour for that. And what we're going to do here is with the Wine Red, it's just fill in the areas completely where we want to have the red glowing heat. So I do it on the vents of his groin armour, the red of the exhaust vents at the back. There's a couple of vent looking things on the back of his legs as well. I add it to that. The vents on the sarcophagus there as well. And there's a light, a sort of a lens on the missile rack. I add it to that as well. So this is just base coating all of those areas with that wine red colour. Right, and once that's done, we'll be moving on to the blood red. Now, to apply the blood red, depends on what you're actually painting. So, for the groin area there, the red will be in the centre third, so covering off the middle area, just leaving little bits of wine red either side. On the sarcophagus, I'll be painting the final 2/3 going from pointing into the aquila, so it looks like the glowing effect is coming from the centre. On the lens, I'll paint the entire lens, and on the heat sort of vents on the back of the legs, it's the same, so it's the centre part. And on the exhaust, I'll be painting towards the centre. So you're basically covering 2/3 of the area, just depending on the 2/3 depends on where you want the most glow to be coming from, because that's what you're doing here. Move the paint from the darkest to the lightest, as that's where the glow will be coming from. Yeah, and that final vent there, we're just painting into the centre. So the next stage is with the white. Get a small part on the tip of your brush, and you'll just be adding a little dot of this, a little line, where you want your brightest point to be. So centre for the groin, the top centres for the vents at the top. Yeah, just follow along here. I don't leave any of these sections out now, so you can see where I'm doing it. But where you want your brightest point to be, just add a tiny dot or line of the white. Don't put too much of this on, it will destroy the effect. On the lenses, I do a little dot in the top section and a crescent in the bottom corner opposite to where you've done the dot. Right, and with that done, I'll just punch the microphone there. With that done, we're then going to add the first of our fluorescent colours. So for that is the Green Stuff World Fluor Red. Give the bottle a very good shake. When you can hear that ball bearing rattle, you know it's shaken very well. And we just add this to our brush, a bit like contrast paint. So you add it directly to the brush and then apply it over all of the area, but focusing on covering that white to give it a nice glowing red effect. And we already have a really easily done red glowing effect across the areas we wanted it to. Where we're using the wet palette, the fluorescent paints are the only paints that don't do well if left too long on a wet palette. They separate very quickly from the pigment and the medium, and even when I've remixed it on the wet palette, they don't go very well. So go careful how much you put out on your wet palettes, because they don't really, like any other paints that stay wet and will remix together. These Fluor paints don't do well with that. Okay, and once that's dry, it doesn't take very long at all. Just grab some AK fluorescent orange, and we are just going to add a little bit of this to the white areas from before, just tiny little dots, not too much. So this is your brightest point of where you want it. Don't put too much of this on, otherwise it will sort of get rid of the red. You're just applying a very small amount. On the camera it's negligible, but in real life when you're doing this you'll really see it work, really make that glowing effect pop. That's the final stage of doing this. You could add some yellow if you wanted to, but it's not necessary at this scale. Okay, one final effect we're going to add to the Dreadnought are the lens, the sort of lights. So for this I just paint over the entire area of the lights in white. Any white will do. I use AK, matte white, GW Skull White is good. The Two Thin Coats white is very good, from Duncan Rhodes. That's worth investing in. I've got a couple of pots of it, but I'm just getting through my AK white for now. And then once that's done, let it dry. It takes a little bit of time to dry. Do this through the airbrush. You could dry brush this if you wanted to, but we've got the airbrush, so we use the airbrush. Just some white ink, and we just add a couple of sprays directly onto the lenses so that we get some overspray onto the pipework below. So we naturally will get a glowing effect now just using the white. And then to finish it off, we'll be using the airbrush again and just pushing some GW Anthracite Blue through onto it, the lights, just to give a blue light glowing effect. It's a great colour, Anthracite Blue. We're going to be using it shortly on the plasma glow. Same principles as we're seeing here, really. So yeah, and like we were applying earlier, not too much of this at once, as it will pull really quickly. You can ruin it. So I would suggest practicing if you're not sure. And there we go, very quickly you get a nice base of a glowing light effect. Okay, so the plasma. As you can see, I haven't glued the gun onto the model. They've got those little knobbly bits at the top that allow you to push fit. So for the plasma, I've already dry brushed with the same principles that we did earlier, with the gunmetal across the metal and some anthracite across the black. Nothing too in depth for the gun. And we're going to be painting the coils now in pure white. It takes a few coats to do this, so you paint the coils, the little holes at the front of the gun. I think there's like 3 or 4 little divots, sort of vent holes, and then there's the coils at the bottom of the gun as well. So it takes a few coats of this just to cover the white. Take your time. If you go over any of the black areas, just go back over them with black, or any the colour that you've painted the housing. If you've painted it red, don't highlight this too much. If you've painted it red or yellow or any colour, because we're going to be adding the plasma effect. So any time you've spent doing fancy highlighting is going to get blown out by the plasma glow we're going to be doing. So just paint your plasma gun with base colours at first, and then come to doing your glow effect. So you just work around the model, painting in the coils white. Okay, once that's done, grab your airbrush, your white ink, good old Vallejo White Ink, and now we're going to be, it's a bit clever what we're doing here. We're not mindlessly airbrushing now, so focusing into the middle of those areas, begin spraying. so that you create a natural overspray to the surrounding areas of your pure white, almost like little halos around them. You'll notice now that at the bottom of the coils I'm pointing the airbrush downwards so that it hits the pure white of the bottom of the coils but oversprays to the surrounding area so that your coils get brighter and get some natural overspray with a little bit more focus towards that bottom centre point. So that's where your brightest part of the blue plasma is going to be. So just take your time. If you get it wrong, base coat the model again in black and you can start again. You're not putting on thick amounts of paint here to ruin detail. A few goes you may get it wrong, but it doesn't take long to perfect this process. So you're just working across the outside edges, so you'll get a natural overspray which creates you, even at this point, you get a natural glowing effect of the white. Yeah, take your time. As you saw at the beginning, I'm not using an expensive airbrush. This airbrush costs £30 from Amazon and does the job perfectly. The next stage, once that white ink has dried, just grab your, as we said, the Anthracite Blue from GW and carefully apply this across the whole of the gun, covering all of your white and the overspray areas. Take your time, don't let it pull, don't spray too much in one go. You can see now easily starting to get a blue glowing effect. Right, this next stage is optional, but it does help with the effect to get its full effectiveness. Is some Contrast Tallarn Blue, and I'm just going to apply this around the outside edges of the light blue, so it's almost where the gradient starts to fade out. I add little spots of this just to make it show that that blue glow is getting darker the further it goes out, or colder. The glowing effects are there to show the hot points and the cold points. Hottest points are the brightest, coldest points are the darkest. So this is almost your coldest points of the glowing effect with your Tallarn Blue. As I said, this is an option. If you use, there is a speed paint called Plasma Coil. You can get a similar effect using that through the airbrush. It's a little bit more blue if you haven't got Anthracite Blue, but I'd just suggest get yourself a tub of Anthracite Blue. It lasts forever and gives a really good quick effect for your plasma. Right, next up we're using our magical mix. So that's a pot of a mix of white ink, water and contrast medium. So it's a drop of white ink, 2 drops of water and a drop of contrast medium, and I just made a massive pot of it into the contrast medium pot. What this is basically a nice almost white contrast paint, that capillaries itself into all of the little gaps. It's so easy to use. So you saw there, I just painted in the bottom edges of the coil there. I'm painting in the leftmost edge, so the edge towards the plasma coil itself. I actually switched brushes here. I was using a too big a brush. Use a 00 now, and I'm now just going to add this white ink to the bottom edge of the plasma coil. So this first coat, I add it across the whole bottom edge of the plasma coil, going up a couple of millimeters, and then the next coat I apply this just in that bottom middle section where I want it to be the brightest, and add just a little couple of lines of it outside of the coil, just shows like the real glowing pulse effect. But yeah, this little white ink mix you make, depending on how much white ink is how many layers you need. So you can add a bit more white ink to get a more purer colour. But I added the 1-2-1 mix. Gives a nice sort of finish where you might need a couple of coats, but you can get a nice gradual increase of brightness with your white. It's a handy pot of paint to have created. Failing that, you can just use white ink with contrast medium, and just mix it as you go. But having the pot of it just saves you a bunch of time. And the final stage, once your white ink is dry, is just some dark blue. I'm using Oxford blue, that's like a Night Lord's blue or a Cantor blue. We're just going to add some darker points to the coils, so only on the very top edges of your coil. Just dry brush over some of this dark blue, so that's your coldest points. Optional extra, it's an optional part, this bit, but it just makes your brightest points pop a little bit more, and then that'll be your plasma done. And there he is, all finished up. I'll cover the gun off in another tutorial. This one I wanted to do the plasma. You can see how bright it is. Flares out the camera. So we're now going to move on to the basin. Oh no, we're not. Yes, we are. So the basin, first part of the basin you saw was a smoke effect. So this is a physical. You can buy the STLs or the physicals from Deadly Print Studios, and this is a physical that I got from them. And we're going to create the flame effect. So with the white ink through the airbrush, the area you want to be the brightest, have pure white ink. So the bottom third, I cover the entire area, tops and bottoms, with the white ink. The rest of it, you'll notice that I will point the model away from me, and so the airbrush hits the bottom edge Now we're creating a flame effect, so where the light of the flame would hit the surrounding smoke and where it would fade away, so that already you can see what the effect we're getting there. Pointing the airbrush, almost as if the paint from the airbrush is grabbing the sides of the cloud and only highlighting the bottom edges, leaving that top part darkest. So you've got where you want it to be the hottest is pure white, and as it gets cooler it fades away, so transitions into that black. Very quickly you can get this effect, as you can see there. I've done a line straight down the middle. I was almost where the flame is hottest and pushing itself upwards, and then get darker and darker. We're going to be using a number of fluorescent paints here, so we're going to be using AK Fluor Yellow and some fluorescent yellow ink. That's for thinning the yellow down. It's roughly a 50-50 mix. You can use water, but you get a little bit of dilution and some colour loss. So very carefully, it's almost as if you're doing this with contrast paint. Make a 50-50 mix of those and then apply this yellow across the whole of the model. Now you can cover the white and you can cover the black, it doesn't matter, you can just paint the whole lot. Take your time here, a few coats of this might be needed. Don't put too much in one area at once, it takes forever to dry. Just work your way around the model. I actually have to change the lighting in a minute because it's so bright, it's knocking the camera out. So I do adjust the colours just to try and get a similar look as I get whilst painting the model. So yeah, first of all we're going to be doing, it's AK Fluorescent Yellow and Dayler Rowner inks. I find them very good, fluorescent yellow, making a mix of those two. From there we're going to move on to orange, so we'll be using AK Orange Fluor colour, AK Fluor Orange, and the Dayler Rowner Fluorescent Orange. And then we're moving into our red, to our fluorescent red, and then some tenebrous grey for the darker points. So here we are with the orange and the fluorescent orange ink, again a 50-50 mix. And what we do here now is we want to get rid of that green tinge that yellow has. Don't ask me how that works, but fluorescent yellow tends to look green until you add another colour over the top. So we're just knocking back. So at the tops of this, pretty much cover all of it from the yellow, so it goes completely orange. And the bottom of it, just do it just to remove the yellowness, but just to keep some in place. So not too much. You're almost partially covering it, a couple of squirts, 50% coverage, while the rest of it you can make fully orange. Right, once that's done, we're going to make this glow properly now with some of our GSW Fluor Red. Straight out of the pot, maybe just add a brush full of water, not too much, it can get too watery. And what we're doing here is, much like we were adding the ink at the beginning, the white ink, is we're pointing the model away from us and the airbrush from bottom to top, so that we're catching those top edges with the red. Very gentle sprays here. You can kill the orange and kill the yellow very quickly, so you add as much of this as you want. It does need to have some, you can't skip this step, but it gives the flame the redness that we're looking for, and oddly makes it glow further. Not sure how it works, but you get a very nice effect using the red. So yeah, aim the model away from you, so the brightest point is closest, coldest point furthest, and the airbrush in the same direction, so that you're creating natural gradients and not catching that top edge. And now what we're doing is the opposite. So we've added some tenebrous grey to the mix, a couple of drops of water, and this now adds the darkest points, so where it's coldest. So pointing the model away from us, the airbrush, top to bottom, coldest to hottest, we're now creating those coldest areas of the smoke cloud. So we're catching edges, catching the top edge completely, and the edges of the clouds towards the bottom we catch a little bit, just to show those colder areas on those darker, on those brighter areas. So 4 or 5 steps, we've created ourselves a quite realistic smoke cloud with the flame, the hottest point at the bottom, and the coldest point at the top. Right. Now we're going to be doing some putting together. So there's a base that I've created, just using some Green Stuff World bits and some brick rubble stuff from eBay, and I want the flame coming from an oil can, so that it's been hit by a bullet and coming out of the oil can. So I'm just positioning the model because we're going to add some glowing effects to the model. So the flame's coming out of there, so you can see that the flame would catch parts of the armour where I want it to glow red, so it would catch the right side of the armour and a bit of the base as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the airbrush and I'm going to be putting some AK blood red with a few drops of water through the airbrush. You could use GW Evil Sun Scarlet for this, the Evil Sun Scarlet Air. I couldn't find my bottle of it, otherwise I'd have used that, but the blood red is good for this. As you can see, I do got practice bit of towel. And so what I'm going to do there is add some of this directly onto the armour we've done. So I'm going to put it onto the feet, onto the legs, anywhere where we just saw there, where we put the model together, where you can see the flame catching, where it would glow, is add some of that red to that area. Not too much. You can oversell it and then it just doesn't do anything. It just looks like it's been painted red. So this is the sort of start of the glowing effect over the claws and over a little bit of the armour. once I've done that, I then want to add some to the base. So I just add this onto the parts underneath the flame and slightly around the flame, so almost creating a halo of red around where the flame would be. We have other means of doing this as well, using the fluorescent paints, but I wanted to just do this a bit different on this model. Try not to catch any areas that would have been in shadow. So work in the direction of how the light would travel from the flame, so it wouldn't catch anything behind it, as that would be blocked. As you can see, when you stand the model back up on it and put the little flame in there, you can see that that's the effect we were going for. To finish the effect off on the Dreadnought, we're going to just use some white, and we're just going to do some edge highlighting where that red is. Just do small areas of white on the parts that are closest to the flame, on the metals and on the blue armour, and then we'll be going over that white with the fluorescent red, so that you get the fluorescent red is almost the glow, and the base red you put in is the after effects of that glow. we just add a final bit of the orange colour on the very tips, the AK fluorescent orange, of where we just want it at the brightest. Really helps sell that fiery glow. And that's it. That's the model done. So just glue everything to the base. You can see there I've glued the flame on, and that's how it looks. And then we're going to glue the Redemptor Dreadnought on. We've painted the base in the black, added some rust, which is just some scrag brown watered down to the base and across the model, just to give it a dusty look. Also just notice I missed a step for you on the lights, the blue lights that we painted. I added a little bit of that watered down white to the centre part of the lenses, just to show that they're glowing. And there's the finished model. So hope you enjoyed that. Like and subscribe as always. Contact me if you've got anything in particular you'd like me to paint or any feedback, and happy painting.